are ready. Thank you very much. Good morning. This is Barbara. We've been talking about the 10 utterances. Before we get started with specific information about that, unless there's a question directed toward it, let's see if there are any other general questions out there. Anybody, any comments, anything you've seen or heard that you want to make a comment about that would be beneficial to others who are listening?
Good morning, Miss Barbara. This is Jackie. And
good morning, Miss Jackie.
Good morning. And I have a question, and I'm trying to understand the Sabbath.
Yes.
I was reading something. I can't remember the scripture, but I just remember it saying, and this was the second Sabbath. And then I remember another Sunday, Evelyn asked the question about, so I can have Sabbath at my desk. And I was trying to connect the two. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, we talked about the Sabbath, and we talked about it initially being in the tradition of the Israelites being the day of remembrance of what Elohim did in terms of creating the earth in 6 days, and then it ceased. And it did not cease because it was tired. It ceased because it wanted to in a sense, see all it had done and was pleased with all it had done. It wasn't a pat on the back sort of thing. It was simply, okay, I've done what I'm going to do, and now I'm going to rest. It's almost like it was a preamble to getting the human that was going to be created as part of that creation process, so that the human could continue on with creation. So it related to a creation of 6 days, however long that 6 days was back then. And it probably wasn't the 6 days that we think about now, because in this arena of time, that's when we try to put specific lengths of periods around a day. But in the arena of the cosmos, that is not necessarily so. So creation of the earth in 6 days, ceased to rest on the seventh day. It ceased on the seventh day. And then the second part of that was that it was a reminder to the Israelites that the source of all life brought them out of Egypt, out of bondage during the Exodus. So every day that was created back then, it ended with, and this was the evening and the morning of the first day, evening and the morning of the second day, etc. But when the Sabbath was created, there was no closure like that. There was no saying that this is the evening and the morning of that day. Do you follow what I'm talking about so far, Jay?
Yes, ma'am.
So it implies then that the Sabbath then is a continual period at this point. It has not closed. And the human has the opportunity during this time to function as the Elohim in whose image it's created, to continue on in the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not necessarily a period of rest physically. However, it's manifested in this realm as, okay, I worked 6 days and now it's time for me, or I worked 5 days, now it's time for me to be off and enjoy my life, enjoy my family, whatever. But the Sabbath relates to a spiritual motion. It's an ebb and flow. It's a motion, and then it's a ceasing to move. It's a motion. It's action, and then it's ceasing to act, kind of thing. So uh, as the question that Evelyn asked related to, well, can I do that at my desk? Can I if Sabbath allows us the opportunity to um, be in the presence of, in terms of paying attention to being in the presence of and being who we are, one with the Creator, that can be done at any time. Lots of times we may meditate as a way of guiding us to this presence. There are people who don't even have to do that. They can simply attend to, pay attention to, decide to do that, and understand and know and feel that presence. Jackie, follow up with questions, because if that wasn't clear, I'm sure there are others on the phone that can also provide input and insight.
Okay. I follow you, Miss Barbara, but I guess my next question would be, so I guess we've been taught that the Sabbath is Sunday. Are we wrong for saying the Sabbath is Sunday?
Let's just say it this way. Culturally, over time, Christians decided that Sabbath would be Sunday, but the Sunday was a day that was worshipped because of the sun god. So that's why it was called Sunday. Traditionally, years ago, and even now, Jewish people use the sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday as their Sabbath. The Muslims, Islamic people use Friday. It doesn't matter. The issue is finding that opportunity to know who you are, to just remember who you are, and to remember the Creator who created you. So no, we do not have to do that on Sunday only, because if that's the case, a lot of people who have to work on Sunday because of working in hospitals or places like that will not be able to adhere to this commandment or this utterance. So no, it's all about intent now, intent and motive. Everything is at that level with us now. So does that speak to your second follow-up question? Your follow-up question.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone? Thank you, Jackie, for the question. Is there anybody else online who wants to speak to that from a different perspective? Please do.
I would like to.
Thank you. Please do.
Thank you. The Sabbath opportunity to recalculate, or opportunity to get in rhythm with the universe. You at work, you have circumstances that frustrate you. You have situations that anger you. You go into the break room, or you sit at your desk, and this is an opportunity for you to get back in rhythm. When we talk about breathing, take a deep breath. That's what we're talking about. Get back in rhythm. And at this time, during the Sabbath, you also have opportunity to return to beginning. And you don't have to state that you return to beginning. You just need to calm yourself and remember who you are, because the Sabbath is an opportunity for you to reflect on your essence. And that's any time, any day of the week, any hour of the day, and any minute of any hour. I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Thank you. It makes
Can
more
we
sense
imagine?
now.
Can we imagine if all of the frustrations and the circumstances and the the time constraints that we've had during the week and the burdens of meetings and stuff, can we imagine what would happen if we had to wait until Sunday to try to, if you will, to try to download all that stuff, get rid of all that stuff? And if you remember, if you think about what happens on Sunday, we've got the usher board that has to have its anniversary, and we've got the choir, of course, has to have theirs, and of course the pastor's anniversary, and then we have to talk about what's been going on during the week for the church family. The bake sale is going to be Tuesday. All of that stuff, we not only bring it from what we have in our personal lives, but on the Sunday, quote unquote, the day that we're supposed to be at rest and ceasing, it just continues on and on. The distractions continue on and on. And therefore, that again is why we need the opportunity and the time, as Pastor said, to breathe and get back in rhythm with the universe ourselves. So it's, as has been said, anytime, any moment that you take, it's all about your motive and your intent to do it.
Miss Barbara.
Yes, sir.
It's Ron. With your permission and with Pastor on the line, I want to read something that he wrote. And I say with your permission because I don't want to get ahead of your lesson, but something Pastor wrote, we alluded to back in 2013.
Yes, sir.
And this
Feel
is
free.
this is under bearing false witness against your neighbor. And Pastor, if you don't mind, elaborate on this, please, and let's talk about it for just a minute. This is the last two paragraphs under the heading of Exodus 20 and 16, if any of y'all have that writing. But it says, the creation took 6 days. On the seventh day, there was no creative activity. The seventh day was a witness to the 6 days of creation. That's what I like. The seventh day was a witness to the 6 days of creation. The seventh day witnessed the purity of the pattern of material existence. The seventh day bore witness to the fruit of what was to come and the nature of its existence. The witness of the seventh day connects to thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. The seventh day is the Sabbath. The Sabbath is an intermission or an opportunity that gives you the space to reflect on your interaction or inaction with each other. If you have gotten out of rhythm with the Creator by bearing false witness, the Sabbath provides the space to return to the rhythm of the Creator. If through repentance and forgiveness that rhythm is restored, So that's the last two paragraphs. Pastor, you elaborate on that, please, because I like the way that was written, and it goes with everything you and Bob have already said, but I just kind of like the way this summed it up, please.
In terms of the witness of the seventh day?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
what you're talking about? Okay. Go ahead.
That and it was one other part. God, I missed it with it. It was something else in there. You said that the witness. I like that part. You can explain that, and it gives you space to reflect on your interaction and inaction. So go into that part a little bit as well, please.
Okay. When you talk about Sabbath giving you an opportunity to reflect on your activities as well as your inactions, what that is talking about is when you quiet yourself and for the purpose of becoming calm or getting in rhythm with the universe. This opportunity, I lost my thought, but the Sabbath actually gives you the space to quiet yourself and to be reflective on all your actions. If your actions were adverse to the principles of the kingdom, it gives you an opportunity to seek forgiveness for that. If you have had an opportunity to do something that was going to benefit someone who needed you, you have an opportunity to reflect on that and seek forgiveness for not doing it, so the next time that you're faced with it, you will respond as opposed to being inactive in that regard. The witness of the seventh.
Pastor, before you get to the witness of the seventh, you said to seek forgiveness. Is that forgiveness also forgiving yourself?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
To seek, thank you for recognizing that, because I'm talking about the forgiveness of yourself for not doing what you knew you should have, as well as forgiveness of yourself for doing things that you should not have done. So this is totally spiritual. It has nothing to do with a day of the week. It has everything to do with an opportunity to be reflective on the essence of your being. The witness of the seventh day is speaking to all that was created. When we pause, when we cease on that Sabbath, what do? We are reminded, or remind ourselves of how creation was accomplished. We remind ourselves of the harmony that we have with creation, the harmony that we have with the trees, the ants, the birds, everything that was created. When we reflect on that in itself brings us to a place of rhythm with the universe and with creation itself. Does that help, Ron?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Ron. Other questions? Okay, then today we will talk about the 10th utterance, which is coveting. And you shall not covet your neighbor's house. This is Exodus 20:14, I believe. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female slave, or his ox or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. And another way of reading this is, do not be envious of your neighbor's house, or jealous, if you will. Do not be envious of your neighbor's wife, his slave, his maid, his ox, his donkey, or anything else that is your neighbor's. So when we look at the word covet, it comes from the Hebrew root of shamad, and it's attracted, desire, take pleasure in, delight in, attracted to, in other words, desire for, take pleasure in, delight in, lust for, strong desire. All of those, covet implies a strong envious desire or even jealousy. It's a feeling of discontent or resentfulness for someone, and it's a desire, it's a longing for someone else's possessions, and that's the issue. Someone else's possessions. And possessions, remember, are not necessarily just physical. Okay? So let's not lose sight of that. When we talk about neighbor, who is your neighbor? Your brothers, your companion, your fellow. It's folk who are related to you. But your neighbor is also symbolic of the inward parts of yourself too. I mean, we have emotions that are part of who we are. We have feelings that are part of who we are. All of these are things that relate to who our neighbors are. And from the Aramaic perspective, you can't just do something from the outside in. It has to be from the inside out as well. And so when Pastor talked about forgiveness, it wasn't just acknowledging that Elohim, the creator of all, forgives, but we being in the image of Elohim, the Father, Mother, creator of all, need to forgive ourselves too. So your neighbors are those inward, innate parts of your character as well. House has to do with household. So it's not just the house itself, but the house and anything about it. Now, if you're talking from the traditional perspective, lots of times they had to go on pilgrimages. And at that time, people would take that opportunity to rob their homes or to take it away from them or take their possessions from them. And this is what this speaks to from a physical manifestation of what that is. Much like today, some people look in the papers for funerals and people who are being funeralized so that they could have the opportunity to case their homes, all of that stuff. But house has to do with household. And again, it relates to the neighbor's house. It relates to all that is with that relates to the neighbor itself and what the neighbor is. Everything that makes up that household for that neighbor, whether it's spiritual or whether it's physical. When we talk about, I guess the question I asked is, why did it say your neighbor's house? And then it broke it down to your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's slave, your neighbor's his maid, his ox and his donkey. Do you see what I'm saying? The difference is, why did it break it down in that way? And so what I'm sharing is just another perspective of what these specific kinds of things symbolize on the metaphysical level. The ox and the donkey are symbolic of emotions that can be manipulated. In other words, they are animals that have been that were once wild, but now have been tamed in a sense. And so these are the emotions within you that can be that you have control over, that can be tamed by you. The ass. I'm sorry. Let me back up. It's the wife. It's the slave. It's the maid. All of these are the emotions that can be manipulated. But when you talk about an ox and a donkey, these are represent are symbolic of instincts, instinctual kinds of primitive behavior, or our reactive behavior, if you will. The way that if we don't think about it, someone does something to us and we'll come back at them automatically. It's representative of those kinds of behavior. So what all of this is saying is, don't be jealous of, don't desire your neighbor's house or anything of your neighbor's. Don't want to be like Mike. in a bad sense. I'm not talking about in the good sense when the kids say, I want to be like Mike. Well, there are some people in the world who manifest deviant behavior that other people want to emulate. If you think about it, just think about what's happening in the world today. Just think about what happened in Canada, even, where with truckers who have 90% vaccine rate, or the 10% are saying, I want my freedom. And they are trying to be like the 64% or 66% in the United States that are unvaccinated. I want my freedom. They're targeting, trying to bring a Trumpy attitude to their thoughts and their perspective for even fewer truckers who have been unvaccinated. So this thing about desiring the possession of another is not physical. It's physical only because we live in the realm, but it's more spiritual. It's about a spiritual kinds of intents and desires. I want it because I want it. I want it because you got it and I like it. I want it. And the issue here is it's a strong, intense desire. It's a strong, intense desire for something of another's. Another way to look at this is that this utterance, where it's located on the second tablet, last utterance, it's sort of like a fence, if you will, or boundary. And if we can maintain our desire to not covet, it keeps us, it's a boundary that keeps us from disobeying and doing everything else that's above it, like murder, commit adultery, steal, lie, all of those things. So it keeps us from those serious sins of murder, adultery, and theft. And I say serious because covetousness is a mind thing. It's a thought thing. It relates to the way we think. But if you remember everything that we've been talking about, it's the thought. It's the emotions and the thoughts that we have that lead to what we say and the actions that we take. And so, what this utterance is designed to do is to keep those thoughts in check, if you will, keep boundaries around them so that we don't let them go wild and begin to control us. So we've got to exercise control over those thoughts about wanting those things that are not ours. And we got to understand that we got to allow ourselves not to dwell there. It's going to come. Let us look through, see it for what it is, and decide that, nope, I am created in the image of Elohim. Elohim, my spiritual father, mother, has provided everything that I need. Everything that I could desire is wrapped up in my image of being created by Elohim. So everything that I want, everything that I desire, everything that I need, I have. So there is no need to covet what someone else has. There's no need to be jealous of what someone else has. Utterance number 7 forbids the act of adultery. But here, utterance number 10 says it forbids even the desire for adultery. See the difference there? Utterance number 8 forbids kidnapping or stealing. But here, coveting, utterance number 10 forbids the desire for acquiring another person's possessions. So right here with this utterance is pivotal that we remain in obedience because one way or the other, this particular utterance can lead us two different ways if we allow it to. If we do not control those emotions and those thoughts within us, our innate emotions, our animalistic thoughts, our thoughts that can be manipulated, all of that, if we don't keep that in line, they begin to overtake us. And then we will follow this track of the 5 commandments that relate to murder, adultery. It says that we are capable of doing that. However, if we are able to control those emotions within us, to remember who we are, to remember in whose image we are created, to remember that in that being in that image we have no lack, then what happens is we remember in terms of our father and our mother. Elohim is our father and mother. If you remember, in a physical sense, your father and mother provided everything that you needed to be comfortable and to survive when you were a kid. The spiritual father provides everything that we need for our spiritual survival. We have no lack. Therefore, we can take time to remember that in creating and in ceasing. I can look back over what I've done and I can make a decision about, well, you know what? I think I liked what Kathy said when she said a missed opportunity. I can take those missed opportunities and set my intent and mind and motive on next time. I will take advantage of that opportunity that I missed before, and I won't miss it this time. That's part of what Sabbath is. It's looking back over the things that you created, that you did well, but there are some areas that this was an opportunity. This was a path that I could have taken that could have improved things, that could have been an opportunity to connect with someone. I can then remember that I don't have to worry about taking my name in vain, because again, this number 9 sets the path in a way that you are likely to take, depending on your thoughts. And if you remember, utterance number one has to do with understanding and acknowledging the existence of the one true creator. Number 10 says, I have the opportunity to continue my acknowledgement of that, or I can choose not to by denying and dishonoring Elohim, by choosing to seek the possessions of another, which says then that I don't think that Elohim, my father, mother, my spiritual father, mother, gave me what I needed. Giving me I think last time we talked about a path, and then if you remember, some of you who read what Pastor wrote, he talked about our paths and our experiences. We have to trust that our father, mother, our Elohim, provides for us the paths, the experiences, the things we call adversities, which are not adversities, but opportunities for growth in our lives, that it provides exactly what we need to reinforce this spiritual entity that we are. It provides what we need. Being like our father, mother, we want to be creative as well. So it has provided everything that we need to nurture this creative process within us as spirit beings. And if we choose to take the path of allowing our wild thoughts to get out of control, to escape, to go willy-nilly, and then we choose to follow them instead of controlling them and letting them follow the spiritual us, We choose to let them get out of control. We follow them. What does that say about how we feel then, about what we said and who we said we were and who we said we are? We didn't really get it in the first place, is what that says. Or if we got it in the first place, we allowed our ego, which is that instinctual, the animalistic kinds of thoughts that we have, we allowed the ego to gain the upper hand and then take control, and then we follow the ego. I'm going to stop in a second and entertain thoughts and questions. This utterance is pivotal because it relates to our thoughts. It is the pivotal kind of everything spiritual. It comes into manifestation through our thoughts, our words, and our actions. So this utterance, if you will, is like the dam, if you will, that keeps the water from spilling over and destroying everything. If we needed a barrier, that's what this utterance does for us. It provides us that quote unquote no-fly zone barrier, or quote unquote whatever they call it in the DMZ is what they used to call it in Vietnam. In Korea, they call it another thing, where there's a barrier between my words, good and evil, in a sense. This is our barrier between good and evil. This particular commandment is the way that I see that. So, Micah 2:2 says that they covet fields, then steal them. If the owner approaches them with a view to reclaiming his money or preventing the theft, i.e. of his property, then he will come to murder. If we are not able to control our thoughts, we will do anything. We will say anything as long as it's for our selfish benefit. Wanting, desiring, being jealous of, whatever the word you want to use, but wanting something that's not yours, says that you think that the Elohim is not capable of having decided to give you exactly what you needed. Possessions coveted become idols. And we were not satisfied. When we start this trek of jealousy and desiring what's not ours, when we get it, it's like dust in our hands. It doesn't satisfy. And we continue to do more and more and more until it leads to the taking of life, the divine spark in someone else. So, in essence, then, what we're saying is, by hook or crook, if we follow this commandment, and if we're not able to follow this commandment of not coveting, then by hook or crook, we'll get what we want and even kill for it. And by hook or crook, getting what we want, we really won't get what we want. Because what we want is something that cannot be held, cannot be contained, cannot be wrapped in a box and put in our vault, cannot be something that we can put in our lockbox in the bank. Because what we really want when we covet is not what we need. So we will always have that hole, that vacuum that cannot be filled with material stuff or with other people's stuff. Let me stop there and see if there are comments, questions.
Bob, it's Ron.
Yes, sir.
That was very well laid out. Thank you. I had not taken the time, I guess, to see all of that, what you said, especially the things you laid out that you shouldn't covet. You named them individually and told what they meant. And that's the first time that hit home. Maybe I've heard it before, but it kind of hit home that time. This one is the one that that really hits with me. I kind of vacillate at times. There are times that I can appreciate not being very materialistic and wanting a lot of stuff or even needing a lot of stuff. And then there are times that I wrestle with saying, you are at this place in life and all your friends are here, or other people are doing this, or other people have that. And it does take me in a direction I don't need to go. And so that kind of hit home, putting all that in perspective. And even though, during those times, you're headed down a slippery slope, you at least I do sometimes end up there anyway. So this kind of summed it up, and I like the discussion at the beginning here talking about the Sabbath, and you were talking about self-forgiveness that sort of gives us a way back, or gives me a way back, something to anchor and hold on to. But yeah, this is very well laid out, and I think it actually kind of summed up everything else we've been talking about with these utterances. So, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ron, for the comment. Any other comments? Because what I want to do next is to just give you a case in point of how covetousness can lead to all the other potential breakage of all the other commandments between humans and humans.
Barbara, this is Evelyn.
Hello.
I like Ron, what Ron just said, and how you lined out everything, and how I do believe we all have received what you said. It resonates with us, and it makes me feel like, okay, it was coming. It makes me feel like it's coming from the Creator in love. It was, just letting us know that it cares for us, and that this is how your life is to be lived. And I believe when you say things the way you did it, the way you put it so beautifully, we can receive it. It resonates. When the church did it, when the preacher would do it, it was like it was manipulative. It was like controlling and everything. And people would rail against it, to be honest with you, sometimes. And it would make people feel bad. But again, I like the way you lined it out. You lined it out in love. This is the way we are to live our lives in order to go back to the beginning. And I appreciate how you did it. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Evelyn. Evelyn, you hit on the key. The key is not necessarily to drive you away. The key is to bring you back to the Elohim that loved enough to create in its image. And these commandments are about love. They really are. If you don't covet and you connect with your neighbor, your internal neighbor, meaning loving yourself and all that you are, the disparate parts of who you are, and balancing those, as well as your external neighbor, whoever that is. It's everybody. It's the relationships. And so our first relationship with the Elohim, our Father, Mother, is symbolic of the relationship that we should have with each other. And it's all about what you say. It's all about love. This commandment teaches us how to do that, gives us a path to do that. And it reminds us, even in the last command, the last utterance, that we, through our thoughts, have that our thoughts are pivotal in our relationships. Okay, any other questions before I do this case study?
I
Yes,
want
sir.
to say something that I saw. What I saw with the first 5 is understanding of who Elohim is, what the expectations of Elohim are. And then in the second tablet, I saw that Elohim was telling the human how to be human. If you avoid these things, that's how you be human. However, if you do the opposite of these things, then you're animalistic, you're not a human. So what I saw there actually is the principles of thinking, knowing we are connected to Elohim, first 5, and second 5, how to live as humans in this earth, knowing that we are Elohim. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
And I wanted to comment right quick as well, how when Evelyn said we look at these, or at least we've been taught to look at these, and we touched on it before, look at these as something, a commandment, something that you must do or you will be punished. And that just came from a lack of understanding in the way that it was interpreted, or at least passed on for a very long time. It's not saying that in the sense that you're going to be punished and commanding, like Pastor Richard just said. It's saying that you will not be able to walk in as a human and Elohim unless these things are actually done. In the same way, if it is my determination to stay completely dry, I can't jump in the pool and then say that I am being punished by being wet. No, in order to be dry, I must remain out of the pool. So in order to walk in that human and that experience of that and knowing of that Elohimness, it is necessary that you do those things that we mentioned and talked about in the tablet to actually experience that. Not punishment if you don't do it. It's just that it's impossible from a law standpoint to walk in eventually from. I'm finished.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Sheldon. Any other comments?
Ms. Barbara, I just thought about something else that's important that I forgot to say.
Sure.
In my case, and in most cases, I would say, when we read this and look at this, we learned in a religious setting that these things were taken from us, that we are victims. What we are learning now, part of this is accountability, and part of understanding and appreciating forgiveness, again, is the self-forgiveness, the forgiving because every situation that I talk about personally is a situation that Ron put himself in, that you, for whatever reason, whatever was going through your head or my head at the time, that I relinquished, or my situation. So self-forgiveness through all of these, as we, read them, is extremely important. And as to recognize that you may still see yourself as a victim, but you are the one that victimized yourself. And so the self-forgiveness is the start to bring it back, to restore that. I can take myself back to the beginning. I have the Sabbath to help me to see it and restore it, and to reflect on creation and start that process. So just listening to what everybody said, that just reminded me of that when we really started these, talking about forgiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for the comment, because early on we said things about beating ourselves up, and that's part of the lie that has been fed to us, that we got to do certain things in order to be forgiven. Well, it starts with self-forgiveness. It starts right there. When we can self-forgive, we can forgive ourselves. I missed the mark. I got tangled up in something, but I've untangled myself now. When we start there, then that puts us in the frame of mind of beginning, like you said, of remembering who we are. In other words, we don't let something external to us tell us, okay, you will be forgiven if you do this, this, and that. Forgive yourself. Just do it now. And because when we do that, then we can say, okay, Elohim, you've given me this path and these experiences that I have for my spiritual growth, for my spiritual awareness of who I really am. And so I left that path because I wanted something that belonged to somebody else. But I think Pastor put it beautifully in what he wrote. He says, you might want something of somebody else, but you don't know what's behind all that you, quote unquote, see. Because if you think about it, if you want something that belongs to somebody else, it came because of what you saw with the eyes. It's those three lusts, remember? Lust of the flesh, lust of the, eyes, and what is the other one? Pride of life? Somebody will find that for me. But it came through those kinds of things. Thank you. That we externalize and we see with our eye. The forgiveness then pulls us back and says to us, I can't see with what's external to me. I have to see with the eye. And with the eye, that's where I can forgive myself and not be caught in this, God can't accept me anymore because of all the stuff I've done. That's a lie. And again, we got a case in point that we're going to talk about in a second that sort of gives us an example. But it starts with, it started with the Creator who created us in its image. And it starts with us, the created in the image of Elohim, that we can continue the path, the life, the experiences that were given to us, just for us. So when I acknowledge that, just for me, this is just what I need. I don't need anybody else's troubles. I don't need anybody else's pain. Got my own, and I'm taking care of it, in other words. So, bottom line is, whenever we have these lust, eyes, whatever, pride of life, there's a reckoning that's coming. And even when we forgive ourselves, depending on what we did, there's a reckoning that comes. There are consequences that come with what we did sometimes. But then it does not necessarily mean that we are not forgiven and that we don't forgive ourselves. We can, I mean, when you fall into the pool, you didn't intend to fall into the pool. As Sheldon said, you get wet. I mean, that just comes with falling into the pool. That's the consequence of falling into the pool. That doesn't mean you stay in the pool and not get out and dry yourself off and move on. So let's look at are there any questions or comments right now?
Miss Barbara, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, George.
One of the things about forgiveness I think that we should give a little attention to is forgiveness and leadership. And what I mean by that is, if you look at Jesus and his security detail or the 12 disciples, he knew Judas was going to turn on him, yet he never told Thomas. He never told any of the disciples, because if he would have told Thomas, we don't know how Thomas would have reacted. So if someone has crossed you, keep it to yourself. Because if you go tell your best friend, then somewhere down the road, in 2 weeks, you forgive the person who crossed you, but yet your best friend, your down by law friend, they ain't forgave that person. So if the people that I have crossed out here, and I've crossed people, when I meet resistance in an arena, first thing that I go to, okay, you connected to someone that I crossed. I can live with it. So when you look at leadership, and then it's not even with leadership, if someone crosses you, it may not be in your best interest to tell your best friend, or it may not be in your best interest to tell your closest proper now, your mama, your daddy, sister, sibling. And if you've ever crossed someone, everybody got a story about how somebody done crossed them. Ain't too many people got stories where they can talk about where they've crossed. So if you've crossed someone and you getting that DC side-eyed look, just factor in, okay, is that person connected to who I cross? So that's one aspect about forgiveness. What's that again, Miss Barbara?
I was going to say, George, in terms of the example you gave, so the issue, if you cross someone, the issue is yours, and so the issue is, what you're saying is, why give that baggage to somebody else? It's your issue. You need to deal with it, because once you put it out there, once you put the words out there, and if you have people who are culpable and who will take that in, it morphs into a life of its own in terms of the other person's experience. And so that has to do with this commandment too. Coveting, it has to do with your thoughts and what you think about something. So if you cross somebody, then that's up to you to go and handle that with that individual, to make amends, etc. So I agree with you. What is the necessity of feeding it to other folk and then letting it take shape and morphing into things that these wild, instinctual, reactive things that you can't corral again, and that there will be larger consequences for potentially. So the forgiveness is an inner forgiveness. And when you can do an inner forgiveness, it teaches you then how to then relate to your friend or to your mama and daddy or your sister, brother, in a much more positive way as well. David was a man after God's own heart. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, you paused. I thought you had stopped. Go ahead.
No, if you're going to say something, that's fine, Tess.
what struck me is when George related to leadership. That's more real than I think we look at. Good leaders do not share with their followers or with those who they are covering. They don't share the things that happen to them when someone does something to them, and they don't do it for the very reason that George mentioned. Not only are you giving somebody that baggage, but they may not forgive the person who did it to you. And I know that from leadership. I also know it better from being a pastor in churches and teaching in churches, because things that happened to me, I kept away from my family because it goes with the territory. Also, I didn't want them to dislike the people because there was something that happened, and quite publicly, and the children are still upset about that, and it happened when they were younger. So, my suggestion is that in order to avoid someone else carrying that baggage, pick and choose very carefully who you share things with, so that you don't end up in a place where they are carrying your burden and you're no longer carrying it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Barbara, and thank you, Reverend Richard, for cleaning that up for me. Like I say, just be careful, because sometimes people will not only carry that burden of not forgiving other people, they'll do something to them. And that's what kind of world you live in. Remember, mamas don't like to see their sons hurt. Mamas don't like to see their children hurt. People can, so it's just best to, we say these things, make sure you keep them in-laws and outlaws out your marriage. So that thing of leadership, of don't tell everyone, and you don't have to be a leader, but yet people who look up to you, you done put money on people's books in prison, and they get out, and man, they glad to see you. And your head hanging down, they want to know what your head hanging down for. I'm the one getting out of prison. They'll go do something to people. So the forgiveness thing is a very intriguing thing to me. Whoever I have beef with, I'm not going to tell Rocksteady. I'm not going to tell Steak Biscuit. I'm not going to tell Puerto Rican Jesus or PJ. I'm not. If they find out, they find out.
I love it. So thank you. Your point's well taken.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Your point's well taken, because you can deal with you, but they got to deal with them. And you're right. It may get quite out of hand depending on how they choose to deal with it. So thank you for sharing that, George. Well, even PJ. Anyway, David was said to be a man after God's own heart. 1 Samuel 13:14. And then Acts 13:22, David again was said to be a man after God's own heart. Let's look at it. You remember David? He was the shepherd. All of his brothers were marched before. I think it was Nathan, who was the prophet, who was looking for another king over Judah and Israel. And he'd seen all those guys, and he says, "Is there none other?" And they marched David. He said, "This is the one. This is the one. This is the one who's to be king." Okay, that's the David we're talking about. And David had his successes in battle. He was seen. He led his army when he went into battle. What's that saying? So and so will kill his thousands, but David his 10,000s. Anyway, that's the David we're talking about. So this David, the man after God's own heart, let's look at what happened with him. His army was out fighting still another battle, and this time David chose to remain behind and chose to relax at his castle, or whatever they called them then. He chose to not lead his troop in battle, and so yes. 1 Samuel 11:4 talks about David being up on the rooftop of his palace. That's what they call it, palace. And Bathsheba he saw across the way there. And Bathsheba was doing her, I guess, her ritual bathing because she had just come through a period of uncleanness, menstruation. But anyway, David saw her bathing. And that's when his eyes started lusting for her. He saw her with his eyes. And what he saw became part of his heart and his thoughts. He could not get her out of his thoughts. So he asked him, who is she? At this point, he was coveting for her. Because if you take the next step, who is she? You put a name behind the vision of the beautiful woman that you saw bathing on the rooftop. And he was told that she was Uriah's wife, and that Uriah was in his army. So David was back at the palace enjoying himself, relaxing. Uriah was fighting in the army. What did David do? After he found out who she was, he sent for her. He took her. It says he sent and he took her. He kidnapped her in a sense. He stole her in a sense. This was not his wife. This was someone who was someone else's wife. He stole her and he lay with her. So here you go. He not only kidnapped and stole her, he coveted her, then he stole her, kidnapped her, then he lay with her, someone else's wife, so he committed adultery. Then he tried to deceive Uriah and others into thinking that Bathsheba, when she sent him word that she was pregnant, he tried to lie and deceive others into thinking the child that Bathsheba was pregnant with was Uriah's. And he even pulled Uriah from battle and said, "Oh, how are things going? Okay, you need a rest. Go in to your wife and just enjoy yourself for this little time that you have away from the battle, away from the front lines." But being the principled person or army corpsman that he was, Uriah says, "I can't do that. I can't do that, enjoy myself when we're out there fighting this battle and all of my other friends and fellow soldiers are out there." And so he refused to do that. He refused to go into Bathsheba. And David even tried again himself. First, he sent someone and told Uriah to do this. And then when Uriah slept outside the door, David pulled Uriah in, talked to Uriah, and tried to get Uriah to go into his wife. So this lying and deceit did not work. 2 Samuel 11:13-14. Because of his covetousness, Because of his thoughts, his words, and his actions, here's what he did next. He'd already murdered Uriah in his mind before he told one of his lieutenants to put Uriah at the front lines fighting, because his intent was that Uriah be killed. And that happened. 2 Samuel 12 is when Nathan came to David and gave him this allegory about someone doing something they should not have, and David detested it and said the man should be put to death. And Nathan reminded him, "So you have spoken." In other words, it reminded David of everything he did. The penalty to David for murder and adultery should have been murder. Should have been death. Nathan told him God forgave him. 2 Samuel 2:14. Because of what David did, he was told that he had given occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, and that the child born to him would surely die. In other words, they knew David's reputation. They knew what he had done. They knew what his enemies knew what he had contributed. His enemies knew that he followed the one true God. His enemies knew that he was vested in doing what the one true God would have him do. And then David, in this one instance, took his eye off of who he was and laid his eyes on Bathsheba. And he allowed those wild thoughts to run rampant. The what ifs. What if I had her? What if she were mine? What if I lay with her? All of that he did not control. And so his enemies saw what happened when David had, as a result of David having Uriah killed. 2 Samuel 13:14. David's daughter, Tamar, was raped by Amnon, one of David's sons. 2 Samuel 13:22 through 23, 28 and 32. In retaliation for the rape of his sister Tamar, his son Absalom murdered Amnon, his brother. Sorry. Second Samuel 15:13 through 16. I'm sorry, this is a call that I have to take. It's about someone who's on the way to the hospital. So just give me a second, please.
Sure.
Want to stop the tape and keep it going?
Pause the tape, please.
But what do you do? Sorry about that. Your thoughts come to you, but what do you do with them? That's the key. What do you do with them when they do come? If they are negative thoughts, let them go. We can recreate our reality with the way we define our thoughts. David chose to allow his thoughts of Bathsheba to take root in his heart to the point where he began to covet and desire her to the extent that he obviously thought he had to have her. Otherwise, he would not have taken her and slept with her. So we're down here talking about the results of that happening. So now his daughter Tamar has been raped by his son. And in retaliation the rape, Tamar's brother, David had lots of wives, and so these I don't think Amnon and Absalom were brothers, and Amnon wasn't Tamar's brother with the same a brother with the same mother kind of thing. But anyway, so after Tamar was raped by Amnon, Absalom, his other son, murdered Amnon, had him murdered. Then in 2 Samuel 15:13 through 16, several years later, Absalom rebelled against David and temporarily took over the throne. In the process of doing this, he went on the same roof and slept with some of David's concubines. David had taken people and left his palace when he heard that his son Absalom had gathered men and were coming to overthrow him, but he had left some of his concubines. So Absalom slept with his concubines in front of all of Israel for the purpose of them seeing what he was doing, which David did in secret with Bathsheba. So on that very palace roof. So because of his deed, 2 Samuel 12:14 again, Nathan reminded David, this has been forgiven you. But because of your deed, your child born to you would die. In other words, David had thrown open his Elohim to view by everyone who says, okay, he's done that. He's not going to be punished. He's done this. He's not going to be punished. He's done this. And so Elohim, even though he forgave David, had to show that there are consequences for his actions. Bathsheba's then first son died. And David, while it took 7 days from the time that 7 days from the time that Nathan told him your child will surely die. It took 7 days for that child to die. And during the interim of the 7 days, David was on his face repenting before Elohim, repenting. And even though he knew that Elohim was not a man that he could lie, that Elohim, it could lie, he was thinking, well, you know what? I'm going to just stay on my face. I'm remorseful about this, and perhaps he will recant. Perhaps he will change his mind. So he would not eat for 7 days. His men, his people came in and said, "Won't you eat some?" Blah blah blah. He would not eat. Then on the 7th day, the child died. They came and he said, because he saw their countenance, he says, "Is the child dead?" And they confirmed that. That's when David got up, he dressed, and he asked them to bring him some food. They couldn't understand that. They said, "Why are you eating and dressing now? You should be remorseful because your son died." Well, David said to them, I did all of that in case Elohim changed its mind. I knew that my son was supposed to die because I'd been told he would surely die. And so what happened was, he did die. I got to go on and live from this point on. I've got to get up. I've got to get back on track. I've got to repurpose in myself that I'm going to follow Elohim. In other words, he did not take that, and he did not lose himself in that remorse. He understood that it was a consequence to his action, but he also understood that he was still forgiven and in a right relationship with the one who created him. So there are consequences for our entanglements. Yes.
Well, Ms. Barbara, quick question for you, or several
Yes.
questions. It still goes back to forgiveness because David's son, and I forgot I can't pronounce, what was his son's name? The one that tried to overthrow him?
Absalom.
Absalom. He was supposed to be killed because back in that day you couldn't do that. You tried to overthrow the government, so it goes back to forgiveness even toward his son. But the question that I have, and it's clearly that this story is an allegory or a MacGuffin. If Uriah and David are best friends, why David don't know who his wife is?
Oh,
because that's something I've always.
I don't know that Uriah was his best friend. No.
Well, when you're in battle, you do share some kind of intimacy with one another when you go into battle with one another.
Agreed, but there are levels to that. There are levels to that intimacy, and Uriah was not in David's inner circle.
Uriah was simply one of the commanders that was on the battlefield. And David was not necessarily the one who chose the leadership over the soldiers. He had people who did that for him, but he knew who they were. So he knew Uriah or knew of him, but he didn't know who his wife was because they did not travel in the same circles as Barbara said.
So that's why he did not know who Bathsheba was. Okay, so can you see what happened in the story then? It went from the covetous thoughts to stealing and kidnapping, to lying about it. I'm sorry, and adultery is in there too, and finally murder. But when we allow these thoughts to take reign, these wild thoughts that we can't really capture and corral, and we follow the thoughts instead of the thoughts being controlled by us, we're liable to do anything. And this is the reminder. These are 5 sayings between humans, for the relationship between humans and humans, are reminders of what we are capable of as the human following his animalistic behavior.
I have a question. It's Ryan. And less of a question, more of a statement, observation.
Hey Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. I've heard adultery several times in regards to David and Bathsheba. Are we not acknowledging that David had the power to call in whoever he wanted for pleasure and that it was actually rape?
That is true. David did have the power to do that. But David also was the man after God's own heart, who had been taught the commandments, the relationship between himself and Elohim, the Father, Mother. He had been taught all of this. He knew all of this. And he knew what he was doing when he finally acquiesced and took Bathsheba. She was another man's wife. That was clearly part of what the commandments of the sayings talked about. So we are acknowledging, yes, indeed, that he had the power he had the authority as the king to do this. The question is, we have the authority as the king and queens of our lives to do certain things. But is it right to do?
Correct. I just want to acknowledge Bathsheba in this because it seems as though it was a joint effort, that it was something she was willing to participate in.
I got you. No, Bathsheba was stolen. She was taken. and she had to do what the king told her to do, even against her will. So thank you for that reminder. Most people might have the misconception that, gosh, Bathsheba caught the king's attention. Well, hey, that's all good for her. So thank you. That was not the case. This was all David. Thank you for the reminder. Matthew
David
5:21.
also.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, I was just simply going to say, David, the utterance of not coveting thy neighbor's wife, it was something he lusted after he covered it. And the scripture clearly says he lusted after her, which means that he had no pure intentions with her.
You're right. He's thinking about a one-night stand until she called and said, "Oops, I'm pregnant." So you see how one thing led to another with him? Because clearly,
But even
the
that,
trial,
a one-night stand is a one-night stand. It's totally different from rape.
you can rape somebody on a one-night stand.
But
you
it's a
can
one-night
rape someone.
sexual.
Yeah, that one-night stand. We're talking semantics here, so let me take the semantics out of it because I don't want us to get. I don't want us to lose the thought in terms of semantics. What David did that one night with Bathsheba is he took her because he was the king. It was not necessarily because that's what she wanted to do. So if you're talking about rape, same thing. Adultery, he also committed adultery because she was married to someone else. So both of those things could have, one does not exclude the other, in other words. You follow what I'm saying?
But it does. Adultery excludes rape. But I understand.
It can, yes. Gotcha. Matthew 5:21-22 talks about murder being likened to anger. That's something for us to think about as we think about what thoughts are running through our minds, guys. Murder is likened to anger. So if we are angry, we need to, take that time and get rebalanced and get back in rhythm with the universe so that we don't allow that anger to fester in us, because it's tantamount. We can be so angry that we can say, I don't want him, I don't want her, I don't want it in my life. That's tantamount to murder. Matthew 5:27-28. Jesus came, the Messiah came, and he turned everything upside down because he said, all of these things you've been talking about here, murder, adultery, he said, the actual act of adultery is the same as the one who looks at a woman and desires her. In other words, he was taking it at the spiritual level. At the spiritual level, we know that everything is unicity. And if you think long enough about something, you begin to speak it, and that something becomes an action. It's the same thing. So that's why we've been talking about guarding our thoughts so much. Matthew 5:33-34. It was said to an older generation, don't break an oath. This is Jesus speaking, but fulfill your vows. But Jesus said, don't take a vow at all. Don't swear that you're going to do this. I swear, if you give me this money, I'm going to bring it back tomorrow. I swear, if you help me get my ox out of the road, I'll give you some vegetables. Why do you have to swear? Either let your yes be yes or your no be no. Why kick it up to that notch when it's not necessary, is what he's saying. Matthew 5:43-44. It's been said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But what Jesus says was, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. took it up a whole nother notch. Because what he's reminding us all is that in spite of what we see our enemy as, or what we see our enemy do, our enemy is us, and we are our enemy. Somebody persecutes you, pray for them. In other words, don't hold any malice against them. Because if what happens is, if you are the one who sees the enemy, then you continue to ruminate in the emotions tied to what enemy represents to you. If you are the one who seems to be persecuted, and that doesn't mean that you're not, remember, that doesn't mean that you're not being persecuted. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying calling reality a lie. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying is what you do with that. What you do with that in terms of your thoughts is what keeps you liberated, or what puts you in bondage. The commandment to love was not new. Leviticus 19:11 back then talked about don't steal, don't deal falsely, don't lie to one another. And Leviticus 19:12 says, don't swear by Elohim's name falsely, nor profane God's name. All of this is a repetition of the commandments. Leviticus 19:3, don't defraud your neighbor or rob him. 19:7, don't hate your brother. Leviticus 19:18, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Deuteronomy 6:5, you shall love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, soul, and might. There is no way you can love the Lord, your God, your Elohim, your mother, father, with everything that you are, with all of your passions and your thoughts and your desires, and hate someone else created in the very same image. You are where your thoughts are. A Hasidic master said, you are where your thoughts are. You are where your thoughts are. You are where your thoughts are. If you remember, thoughts transcend time. Just remember one bad thing that's happened in your life. Or just remember perhaps a death of someone you loved dearly in your life. All you got to do is think about it, and it puts you right back there with the same emotions that you feel. It's like you're there. That's because you are. You are where your thoughts are. So it's up to me, it's up to you, it's up to us to make sure our thoughts are where they need to be in rhythm with the universe. I am not saying that to remember those things and to feel what you felt then is bad. There is nothing bad or good. It just is. But it's a reminder to us that wherever our thoughts are, if we ruminate on it, we think on it long enough, it becomes speech and it becomes action. I got just a couple more, and then we'll finish with questions and comments. Matthew 22:37. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with everything that you are. Your passions, your everything, your heart, your soul, and your mind. Look at the first four comments. The first five, really, sayings or commands or utterances. All that is about love, loving the Creator, acknowledging the Creator. And then Matthew 22:38 says, love your neighbors as yourself. Look at the rest of the commands, the sayings, the utterances. If you love your neighbor, you won't murder, you won't commit adultery, you won't steal, you won't bear false witness, you won't allow those desires that come into your mind to take root, and then you begin to covet them intensely. So Jesus boiled, the Mashiach boiled all 10 of these down to 2. Matthew 5:17. Mashiach said he didn't come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them. In other words, these 10 are not merely abolished, but it's kicked up another notch, if you will. It's not about the actual doing, it's about the thing that comes before the actual doing. It's about the thoughts. Everything is about our thoughts. Mark 12:29-31. Listen, you who rule as Elohim. The Lord, our Elohim, the Lord is one. Love your God with your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so the one who began as a thought ends the things with the concept of thoughts and what it means for the human to think, and shows us how to think. And all of these are all about love. Let's see what questions and comments you have.
Very well done. I appreciate this. This was awesome. I just have one comment. I was looking at what was that? 2 Samuel with David and Bathsheba, and it talks about when the act was done that she cleansed herself from purified herself. I think is how it said it, from the uncleanliness, which speaks to the fact that her mindset, she cleanses herself immediately after it is done before she leaves and goes home, which I think talks about, because if this is an act with her husband, it is not an unclean thing that is done. So the fact that she does that, I think, says, at least I think it says that it was not something willingly done on her part, that she understood what was taking place. So,
thank you, Ron.
But anyway, yeah.
This covetousness thing, guys, is a big deal because it deals with thoughts. And it's a big deal when Jesus overlays it with motive and intent. Motive and intent comes out of thoughts. It sounds to me like you all are processing. So any other questions or comments?
I have one. This is Charles. When you said, God said, love him with all your heart and with all your soul, and love your neighbor like yourself. Explain that, please.
Okay.
A little bit more.
Okay. Loving the Lord with everything that we are. We have thoughts that are of the mind, emotions that are attached to the mind. We have emotions that are attached to hello.
I'm still here.
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm beeping. It looks like I got a call from Pastor. But anyway, and all of these emotions are centered in us at different places. the mind, the heart, the soul being the essence of who we are. And what happens is emotions are interpreted differently at these different places. But where the rubber meets the road is how we interpret them in line with who we are as being image bearers of Elohim. So all of our mind, all of our heart, our soul relates to all of the. Hello? All of that has to do with our passions, everything that we are. Heart, mind, soul, all of us. Loving your neighbor as yourself, because we are image bearers, we're Elohim's image bearers. My neighbor is an image bearer of Elohim also. So I cannot say that I love Elohim, my father, mother, with everything that I have, and not love my neighbor who is the same as me in terms of bearing the image. Because if I deny him, I deny Elohim, because he bears the image also. I mean, even Jesus brought this to us at another level. How can you say you love God whom you've not seen and hate your neighbor? So he was saying that even on a physical level, you see this person that you hate. But on a spiritual level, you say you love me and you can't even see me. And so what he's done is brought it together and say, you both are created in my image. You bear my image. And in me, you cannot not love your neighbor and love me. And I don't know if that helps you, Charles, or can someone else, if it does not, keep asking the question, Charles. Keep asking.
It helps.
Any other comments? Well, I tell you what, this series has been a work for me. And I don't mean that externally. I mean, it's been a work for me internally. You cannot go through these and meditate on them and think about them unless they work within you. And so I can see, Kathy, that there are still opportunities for me to improve upon as I manifest Elohim in the physical. But just remember, all of it is about love. And you can always, always redeem yourself. You are not irredeemable. Just forgive yourself and get back on the path that you were given by your father, mother for your spiritual growth and enhancement. Because the path that has been chosen for you is exactly what you need in order for you to show others or manifest Elohim to others. So thank you for this, being on this journey again, because we'll probably do the commandments again at some point in time. And like we said, everything is a continual unfolding. That's the beauty of truth. And that's the beauty of the word itself. It continually reveals itself to us. So we don't just see the rose, but we begin to see what's underneath the rose, what gives the rose its life, what nourishes and feeds the rose. And then underneath that is something else, what gives the cells of the rose what it needs. So it's a continual unfolding. So thank you.
Barbara?
Yes.
Yeah, if I may, again, we just want to thank you for your teachings and everyone else who may have had some dialogue or just the spirit bearing witness to what we have been taught with regard to the utterances. And I just want to just read a poem on forgiveness. And I think it reflects on all that have been taught. And it says, that slight misdeed of yesterday, why should it mar today? The thing he said, she said, the thing you did have long since passed away. For yesterday was but a trial, today you will succeed. And from mistakes of yesterday will come some noble deed. Forgive yourself for thoughtlessness. Do not condemn the past, for it is gone with its mistakes. Their memory cannot last. Forget the failures and misdeeds. From such an experience rise. Why should you let your head be bowed? Lift up your heart and eyes. So I just wanted to share, that poem on forgive. And again, I just thank you and everyone else who's been on this journey for the teachings on the utterance. Just wanted to share those thoughts, Barbara. Thank you.
Beautiful, George. And it's uncanny that you did that poem, because I was going to end with a poem also. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. This is a poem of meditation. This is where I'm going to end this, unless there are other questions or comments right now. I'll make time for them. Thank you again, George. Song of my heart. Song of my heart, blessing of my soul, essence of my being. Gentle and compassionate God, the time has come. I am here, and I am ready to become what I have promised to become. On me there is the armor I created to fight ancient battles. Within me there are the great sorrows, old crystallized sadnesses, unwept tears, and deep hurts. All these which I, in my ignorance, have held on to so dearly. My spark of divinity no longer needs or wants. All of these things I've held on, my spark of divinity no longer needs or wants. Minister to me, for my doors are open. Need the armor away. I release it to you. Touch the great sorrows, the old sadnesses, and the deep hurts. I surrender them all through you. Work on me. And your hands of love will I manifest in my life as love. Talk to me. And your words will I manifest as music. Help me. And your help will I multiply 10 times over as I help others. Touch me. And I shall so expand the touch that it will hug, surround, and nurture Mother Earth herself. Oh, song of my heart, blessing of my soul, essence of my being, gentle and compassionate God. I thank you for helping me become what I have wanted and what I have promised to become. This is a meditation out of the book by Robert Harrell, The Inner Meaning of the Hebrew Letters. And thank you, guys, as we continue to become what we promised to become. Have a great afternoon.
May I? May I?
Oh, sorry, Doctor. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. And then you can tell us when we can leave.
I simply want to say this. I don't want anyone to take this as checklist. The things that we have learned and the things that we've been shown through these utterances are not a checklist. Do the right thing, and I guarantee you, you will be in step with the utterances that we have been talking about. That's all I want to say. And I hope ST is ready with the 8th. Thank you. Excellent job. And I'm grateful.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm grateful.
You're quite welcome.
Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Have one good one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
See you on tomorrow.
Thank you. Happy Saturday.